There's a phrase you've almost certainly used about yourself. I just need to recharge my social battery. It's the polite way of saying, please let me be alone for a while. And everyone understands it. But here's the strange part. That phrase is probably wrong, because the real reason some people need solitude isn't about a dying battery. It's something much deeper than that, something measurable. There's neuroscience behind it, decades of brain research behind it, and a simple 15-minute experiment that might completely change the way you think about being alone. So let's start where most people misunderstand introverts. Picture this. You spend hours with people you genuinely like, good conversations, real laughter, a great atmosphere. And then, the second you get home, something inside you exhales. Not because it was bad, because it was a lot. For years we explained this with the battery metaphor. Introverts lose energy around people, extroverts gain it. Simple, convenient, but incomplete, because it frames solitude as recovery time, like being alone is just a break between the important parts of life. And that's the mistake. Researchers studying introversion discovered something far more interesting. Introverts don't necessarily have less social energy. Their nervous systems simply process stimulation differently. Back in the 1960s, psychologist Hans Eysenck proposed that introverts naturally operate at a higher level of internal arousal. In simple terms, their brains are already more switched on. So the same noisy room that feels exciting to one person can slowly become overwhelming to another. Not because they're weak, not because they dislike people, but because their system reaches overload faster. And dopamine plays a role here too. Extroverts tend to get stronger reward responses from external stimulation. Crowds, excitement, novelty, constant interaction. But introverts often respond more deeply to a different chemical pathway entirely. Acetylcholine, a system associated with calm focus, reflection, and deep thinking. Which means something important. Solitude isn't the absence of pleasure for introverts, it's a different kind of pleasure. That quiet person reading alone with tea and headphones on, they aren't missing out on life. Their brain is experiencing a form of satisfaction it was literally built to enjoy. And then researchers discovered something even stranger. In 2018, scientists studying solitude found that spending time alone creates what they called a deactivation effect. After just 15 minutes alone, intentionally alone, without devices, people experienced measurable emotional calming. Stress decreased. Irritation decreased. But even excitement and urgency softened too. It was like the brain slowly turned the volume down on everything. And the effect only happened in solitude. Even sitting quietly beside another person kept the nervous system partially switched on. Think about that for a second. 15 minutes. Not a weekend retreat, not disappearing into the mountains, just 15 quiet minutes where nobody needs anything from you. Now compare that to how most people actually live. Constant notifications, constant conversations, constant availability. Most of us are almost never mentally alone anymore. And that creates another feeling researchers recently gave a name to, a loneliness. The distress of not getting enough time to yourself, the opposite of loneliness. That stretched thin feeling after days of non-stop interaction. That sense that your mind hasn't belonged to you all week. That has a name now. And honestly, a lot of people have probably been experiencing it for years without realizing it. The important distinction is this. Solitude and loneliness are not the same thing. Loneliness is wanting connection and not having it. Solitude is being alone and genuinely enjoying it. And studies show the biggest factor isn't introversion itself, it's choice. Chosen solitude improves well-being far more than isolation forced onto you. The freedom to say, I need quiet right now, without guilt, without apology. That changes everything. And maybe that's why modern life feels so exhausting for certain people. The world increasingly rewards constant visibility, open offices, group chats, endless collaboration, always online, always reachable. But for a nervous system that already processes stimulation intensely, that environment becomes mentally expensive. Then something interesting happened during lockdown. For many introverts, working from home felt peaceful, not lonely, not depressing, peaceful. For the first time, their environment matched the way their mind naturally worked. And many people quietly realized something uncomfortable. They weren't tired of life. They were tired of overstimulation. Neuroscience may explain part of this, too. Researchers studying the brain's default mode network, the system linked to reflection, imagination, and internal thought, found it tends to be more active in introverts, meaning solitude isn't empty time, it's productive internal time. The inner world finally gets space to breathe. That may also explain why solitude appears repeatedly in creativity. Nikola Tesla once said, "Be alone. That is the secret of invention." Einstein spoke about the importance of quiet for creative thought. And psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi found that talented young people who couldn't tolerate solitude often struggled to fully develop their abilities. Because deep practice happens alone. You cannot master something if you cannot tolerate the room where practice happens. And this leads to one final misunderstanding. People often assume wanting solitude means something is wrong socially. But psychologists discovered there's a major difference between social anxiety and simply preferring quiet. One comes from fear. The other comes from freedom. Some people withdraw because they're anxious. Others withdraw because solitude genuinely feels nourishing. And those are not the same thing at all. In fact, research found that freely chosen solitude is often connected with creativity, not dysfunction. So maybe the person who constantly needs quiet, the person who disappears for a while after social events, the person who protects their alone time carefully, isn't antisocial. Maybe they simply understand something important about themselves. Because the truth is, solitude is not doing nothing. When an introvert spends time alone, the nervous system settles. The emotional noise lowers. Reflection becomes clearer. Creativity gets room. The mind finally stops defending itself from stimulation long enough to think deeply again. And maybe that's why 15 minutes can matter so much. Not scrolling, not hiding, not escaping. Just intentional silence. A small moment where nobody is asking for your attention, where your brain can finally unclench. So if you spent years feeling guilty for needing more quiet than the people around you, here's what decades of research suggest. You are not broken. You are not difficult. You are not antisocial. You simply have a nervous system that experiences peace differently. And for some people, solitude is not the opposite of living, it's an essential part of living well. So take the 15 minutes.